Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
No Cup for You! UnSpun. No Cups. No Cups. It's that song that movie, The Cup.
Yes, I have no coconuts. No coconuts for you?
No. Anyways, I'm referring
Yes,
obviously
we
to
have
Ken
no
Sim.
bananas. No bananas.
No,
oh yeah, Ken Sim.
anyway,
Okay.
yes. No cups. No cup fee. He's going to get rid of it. He says he's announced it yesterday. No cups. No cup fee.
So George, for the
Cup fee.
purposes of UnSpun,
Yes.
what the hell? Why were we having a cup fee in the first place? Like where we all pay? Would you like a bag for that?
Well, that's the bag fee. It'd be good if you got rid of that too.
It's all in the
We
same
have
vein in my mind.
Richmond has it too now. They have the bag fee. So this was something that it happened under the previous council in Vancouver, and when I was in council, we got several reports from staff. And Vancouver's, and this is with Vision Vancouver, who would be considered a very green party and green government. Staff would appeal with logic and say, here's the challenge with these kinds of fees is that they just encourage people. First of all, the bag fee makes people go buy plastic bags, and that actually adds more plastic bags into the environment. And it's, not recycled bags. These are brand new bags they're buying, and they're going one use. A lot of people I know, for me, with plastic bags, I would use them 2 or 3 times and then use them as a garbage bag at the end. So instead we're buying, and I do this myself, I buy plastic garbage bags now because I need to put my garbage in something. And so I spend money on bags, and I put this brand new bag into the garbage. And so they would argue that. They also said that paper bags are really bad. The amount of content and the cost and the environmental impact and the footprint's huge. And so that's bad. Even worse is cloth bags, which are terrible for the environment. The process for creating cotton.
Hundreds. Yeah.
It's terrible. And then there's the cup fee, which makes no sense at all. But nobody knows. There's a straw, banning straws, and then the cup fee. And this is basically a tax that if you go to McDonald's, it's funny. They when you drive up, they'll ask you about cups, and of course you have to use a cup. So they charge extra for the cup. Then they ask you if you want a bag, and you're like, well, no, I guess not. And then, but they still give you a bag. You still get a bag.
It's convenient for them, but they just don't charge you the 15 cents for the bag.
Right. That's right. If they charge you the money, McDonald's, say no to the bag. You'll get one anyways.
When they charge you the money for the cup, where does the money go?
Right into the pockets of the corporations and the companies. So
how is that
not
green?
A tax? It's a revenue maker for these companies, which I'm sure they appreciate, these multinationals. But it doesn't make any sense. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's once again those things that's so misdirected. It's based on a desire to solve a problem here, doing something that's not going to solve the problem. It's just like it's lipstick on a, what is it, pig? Is that what it's like? Yep. It's not something there's better ways to do this. Like think about how our buildings are built and green roofs and putting your energy into those kinds of things, insulation, these are things that make a difference.
Maybe having people, big buildings. I know that a city skyline is important, especially in the darkness of night, but how many lights do we really need on?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like there are other ways that doesn't cost an already strapped taxpayer more. That's what, and I'm really pleased. You mentioned Ken Sim, Vancouver Board of Trade is where the mayor was speaking to this and other things. So you were there, so I'm going to pick your brain on that. But so far, watching this new mayor, we can keep calling him the new mayor because it was your birthday back in October.
Well, the Board of Trade said it was 101 days. And I'm like, 101 days. And even Ken Sim said, is it 101 days? I guess since he was elected, but he really didn't. He said, I thought it was like 2 months, but okay, we'll go with 100 days.
Right. So because it was November. It was November when he was sworn in, right? Like at that
he got elected 100 days ago. Yeah. So
right. Okay. So what was it like at the Vancouver Board of Trade, just in general? Take us on a journey. Take us on the unspun journey of what you saw there.
Well, first of all, it was packed. It was packed. They could have sold a room twice the size from what I heard. It was sold out, beyond sold out. So that is part of that was related to COVID being, over as it is, and people being able to be together. And this is sort of the
Way to
big
get mail, George. We're going to get mail on that.
and the fact that this is a business community that's very interested in this new mayor who's, supposed to be pro-business. They wanted to hear what you have to say. And of course, we all want to hear the solutions. And so Ken Sim got up there. And one of the interesting things was he was introduced by the Vancouver Port Authority, the Port of Vancouver. And it's funny because Gregor Robertson and Vision never really acknowledged the port. They really hated the port. They would not, from what I understood, what I've been told by certain people, Gregor never went to visit the port. He never met with them.
Why?
It's like our biggest taxpayer, the port, right?
Yeah.
And
We're
it's
a
our
port
biggest
city.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're the biggest port city in North America. And
Why?
so that's the biggest port in North America. And anyways, so they were happy to sponsor this lunch and introduce him. So that was the first kind of statement right there. Anyways, he got up, took his jacket off because that's casual Ken.
That's his thing. Casual Ken.
Let me just roll up my sleeves and get to work. I mean, it's a bit dorky. I mean, he's trying to be cool, I guess, but
A little
when you
bit
try
sporty.
to be cool, the opposite happens. Anyways, I don't know. It's fine.
Casual Ken.
Casual Ken. So he got very thirsty too. It's funny. He kept taking sips of water. He brought it up several times. And he kept thinking, is it dry in here? I was like, dude, you're nervous. It's all right. It's okay. Yeah. You're thirsty. We've all had dry mouth when we've spoken in a public setting.
You're allowed to pause. Allowed to pause and drink.
Cotton mouth. It's scary. You start to kind of panic. You think, what's wrong with me? And it's just immediate dehydration. Anyways, he kept bringing it up. I was like, dude, just drink your water. Nobody knows. Anyway, so the first part, I was kind of, because I was texting a couple of reporters who wanted to talk to me afterwards, and I was saying they wanted to know what I would think. And I said, well, I'll let you know when he's got something to say, because big history lesson at start, a lot of history about what's wrong with this, what all this and that, and history. Yeah, we all know that. What are you going to do about it?
This is an educated audience here.
Yeah, we know. So he finally got to it in the last 10 minutes of his thing, and it was interesting in that the way I put it with the Vancouver Sun was, I said to Dan Famano, I said, he talked a lot about, he spent a lot of time, especially at the end, saying, please give me time. Don't get mad at me. Already kind of speaking to the reporters in the room, and probably people like us who, like to rant on about people. Give me time. These are big problems. And I think it's funny because I think this is a business thing. And you probably do this, I think. You can't get everything done in one day. You can't get your goals, your long-term goals done in one day. You have your long-term goals, but you actually achieve those goals by micro incremental daily goals. Like I do six. I do 6 things in a day. Like I just have my list of 6, and that's it. And they're all related in some way to the goal, but they're just smaller things that you do. And that's how you run a business. Generally, you have your goals, you have your things, all those meetings, but your things you need to get that done that day. You can't do more.
You got to leave space for the things that are urgent that you can't foresee.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can't
try and
stock everything and try and fix everything all at once. You got to do the thing that moves the ball further down the field.
That's right.
To use a football analogy.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, so that's how journalism works a little bit. You kind of do a little bit of research, get and then you get to the bigger story. So that's
when people say, like, how did you get to where you are? How did you do the thing? Well, I mean, every day I work towards the goal of doing this thing. And eventually you find yourself hitting that, and then you make a new goal and you push towards the next one, and then you get to there. And then, so, I mean, did he get to what his most urgent goals are? Any timelines on anything?
And Amanda's dad always says, the harder I work, the luckier I get. It's a great quote, because it's so true. Because you're not lucky, and there's no very few immediate success stories that people just suddenly become successful. They work at it wherever they started. There's just on that point. So I think he's trying to apologize in advance for not achieving the goals overnight. So prepare yourself. I can't get to this without doing a million little things. And that's actually how government operates if you're doing it as a non-politician. This is the challenge, because people, as much as it's common sense and doing those little things will get you there, people are impatient. Journalists like to do stories that are more sensational. If you're not doing big things and you're not making big changes, people will start nipping at you. They'll start they'll start poking, saying, when is it going to change? Going to happen? So he's trying to remind people this because it's true, of course, but it's really hard to pull off. And, after 200 days or 500 days, he can keep saying that. But if people don't see change in a bigger way, they're going to start saying, okay, buddy, So he's trying to say, but I said, remember when I said that? Anyway, so that's one thing. It's an interesting setup for himself, so he can always point back. But in politics, you're only as good as your next thing. So a couple of things that were surprising was he was very adamant about view cones and not allow us being obsessed with this. So tower developments, and we're stopping these developments from having, because it has a little corner that's going to block some people's view, and that's ridiculous. And okay, and view corridors as well, he mentioned. So these are two big things in Vancouver in a lot of ways.
Huge. Yeah.
And people get really, really uptight about it. So we'll see how that plays out. He said that the cup thing, he said he's going to cancel the cup. But that was one of the things he said. I thought I could do that like tomorrow, but apparently there's a process. So it'll probably be May before we can stop the cup fee. And it just shows you, and it's a little lesson for him about how slow bureaucracy is.
Right.
And there was also, permitting, and there's an interesting thing that came out today because that's his big thing. He wants to speed up
Auditor General. Yeah.
And
the Auditor General report came in, and it was like, thank you very much for thank you everybody for playing nice with me while I check this out, and here's what I learned. And it was nice, and then the delivery was in unspun terms.
Well, you haven't taught your staff to do the work. I mean, what was clear in this is a very short press release, but it was basically said the processes aren't that bad, the fees aren't terrible. They're in line.
The fees are in line, which is good news. The fees are in line. The trouble is there's a bunch of fees that aren't necessarily being paid by some, which if you read in deep enough for someone like me, it's the same, like the pro developer kind of jam. It's like, well, who exactly isn't paying the full pull? And who is? Like, there's a question I'd have. My first question for the Auditor General would be, have we identified who's not paying? Or are we just saying that it was just a little bit of a mistake by the people who aren't trained properly? I mean, my unspun radar dinged.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, and of course you have to be careful because you don't want to get yourself into kind of some kind of litigious situation, or you don't want to have you don't have staff be outraged and think they're being accused of something. So coupling this basic accusation that you defined there, and you may be right, with the fact that, hey, but it may not be their fault.
Maybe right, maybe crazy.
They may you may be crazy, but the fact that maybe it's because staff haven't been trained properly. So let's deal with that.
I don't blame those staff. That's one point. If that's true, both are at the end of the day costing the taxpayer. Yes. Right? Because this is where the revenue comes from. This is funny how when private real estate transactions happen, there is no wiggle room for those. It's just it's like, I don't know anybody who didn't have to pay for a permit on their application to redo their deck or their bathroom or the whatever. So it's like, that's why these transparency things are so important. And I do believe one step closer to that, because this is not the current administration's issues, right? Yeah. We're looking back here, like where are the shortcomings here? Why is there a backlog of permitting? Why does it take years to build the thing that people can then live in or work from? Like that, it seems super basic, George, and it's as you said about the cups, as you've said about the slowness, the bureaucracy around getting stuff done. Yeah. This feels like one that should be urgently addressed, and it should be all hands on deck. Open the books. Let's look at what the problem is here, because we can't get the housing built without the permits. Like, it all comes back to the permits. All of it comes back. But it feels like someone's like, oh, but if we open everything up, they're going to see what the permits were. It's like, oh God.
Well, and he didn't even get into the speed at which these things are presented, which is mostly the complaints, is not always the cost. It's the speed. And that seems to be the number one subject. But if you say, well, maybe speed is related to the fact that staff are inconsistent in their training. And in fact, if you talk to anybody who's gone and permits, they'll say quite often, "Oh, I went to this guy. He said this. Then I went to somebody else down the end of the aisle, and he said the exact opposite." Well, which is it? Like, what's the process, and how much is it, and what?
Yeah.
You hear that a lot.
And
So
what do you mean? What do you mean you need the original drawings that I already gave to you a year ago?
right,
Oh, that other guy, they lost those drawings. We're going to need the original drawings
yeah,
again.
yeah, or that
Original.
the different department. Our department needs our own
But
drawings.
that I gave
Yeah,
you the drawings. I gave you the actual. That's like
yeah,
taking my birth
that kind of
certificate and
stuff.
telling me you need my birth certificate. Like, come on. This is
Yeah, I don't
it's
think
a little
people mind
chaotic.
paying a fee if they get
Yeah. Give
what they
me.
want.
Yeah. And it
It
happens in
involves
Port
customer
Coquitlam and
service.
Burnaby and Richmond and Ladner and like it
Yeah.
happens in other jurisdictions all around the city of Vancouver. So what is broken here? And certainly it's a bigger machine. I acknowledge that it is a much larger machine, which we've discussed over the 202 episodes of this podcast almost weekly, that we have delved into the complexities of just getting stuff done, and permitting is a struggle. Permitting and property taxes and highest and best use taxes, and we get into
Well,
corporate
if
tax versus
yeah, and
private home tax, and oh my
if you're
god.
talking about supply and demand to get more houses built, whether and Ken Sim talked about this, we want more housing, social, private, nonprofit. We need more, but if we can't get more if we're sitting on pieces. It takes 4 to 5 years, and of course that's true. And so, when
It's
you've got
crazy.
something that's holding them up, and then there's staff that are not, fully with the process, and you get
Yeah,
this backlog and this chaos, and
hopefully they
so
can clean it up. Hopefully they can clean it up.
well,
Speaking
and
of
that's
cleaning
going to
it
be
up, can
staff's
I?
job. It's
Right.
not politicians can't do that alone.
That's
That's
right. And people, and you've taught me, again, this is an unspun thing. There's a difference between the elected officials and the staff. That
Mhm.
the staff doesn't change over with a new city council and mayor and park
No,
board. The staff
no,
doesn't change. So it's like, okay. And
yeah,
these are some really hardworking people. So, and they're doing what they're directed to do, and they're trying to follow guidelines. And if they're not properly trained or understand what is expected or what is allowed, you're going to take the path of least resistance, I'd imagine, on trying to make sure that all T's are crossed and I's are dotted. I want to talk about Surrey Police and RCMP. I had the opportunity last week, as we mentioned, to speak with David-Eby. Premier David-Eby came in studio on the
Mhm.
show, and we were talking about. And one of the things I'm like, Linda, close your ears. I got to ask him something, because Linda's married to Norm Lipinski, who's the
The chief.
police chief of
Sorry,
Surrey
yeah.
Police Services. So Premier-Eby said by the end of the month, there will be a decision as to whether or not Surrey will
Mm.
continue to move forward with the Surrey Police Services transition, or revert back to and take the hit on all of what has been spent on SPS and go back to the RCMP in Surrey. I'm just wondering, what do you think is going to happen? You want to make a prediction? Like, this is your Super Bowl kind of thing, isn't it?
I would say that they'll be don't bother. I think that I've talked about this before. I wonder what the polling is on this. NDP and Liberals need Surrey. What's the polling on this? Are people frustrated in Surrey? Clearly, the mayor that just won on a campaign saying no to Surrey Police Services and yes to RCMP. Let's keep what we have. She won her election on that.
And the
So
prior mayor won on the election of we're going to change it.
yeah,
It's just so bizarre.
so it's a balance. It's like probably 50-50, right?
Yeah.
So I think they'll look at it riding to riding, and I'm not saying that's 100% what they're doing politically, but it's a bit of a multi-million, if not billion-dollar quagmire that Surrey's in, because if they say keep it, well, I mean, in a way that if the province says keep it, the mayor can go, oh, it's not my fault. I have to now move forward with this, and I wanted to get rid of it, but I'm not allowed
Right.
to. And
There's
the
the
ball is,
spin.
yeah, the ball is already rolling down
Blame
their court.
them.
So,
It's a
yeah,
little bit of this, right?
yeah, yeah. What would be smart to do
Interesting.
is why you talk to communities around, talk to Langley, talk to other places, White Rock. Let's amalgamate our police forces into a Fraser Valley police force that might lower the
Right.
cost, right?
Right. Or
So
provincial police,
yeah,
because
like the
one of the
OPP,
arguments, yeah, like
mhm,
the OPP, right?
OPP,
Having lived
yeah,
almost a decade in Ontario, understanding the interworkings, like, so you connect the dots in the neighborhoods. Not that the police departments don't all work together, but the federal piece of the puzzle, the RCMP, which is in many jurisdictions, right around British Columbia, obviously.
hmm
It's just does everybody work nice together? That would be my question, because making a decision, from what I understand, making a decision at the RCMP level, it has to go all the way to Ottawa and then come back. And where on municipal police, it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
Just, and
it's a
like you
math
said, if you
equation too.
connect them all, for sure.
It's like
It's a math.
with the RCMP, you can only ask for so much because then they can only give you so much. If you have your own police department, if you have the political will and there's the support, you can, like in Vancouver, where you keep adding money until it's becomes 40% of your budget. So it gives I'm torn on this issue because having been in council in Vancouver and have worked with the VPD and seen how they're connected to the community. And I don't know what the RCMP is like, but it's hard to imagine that when you have a process where you have no choice of who's going to be in charge of your local police force, who the chief will be in that community. It's all determined out of Ottawa. How that helps them connect with your community in a way that Surrey is different than Langley. Langley is different than White Rock. White Rock's different than Delta, et
Delta.
cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's you look at the American model, we have the FBI, and then you have your local police forces, and here
Right.
we have kind of a
Interesting.
mixture.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll keep our ear to the ground and we'll tell you what happens when it happens. Let's talk a little bit of federal politics. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, just did the retreat. I was watching the press briefing as of Thursday. This is Thursday the 25th, or sorry, Wednesday. We're taping early,
Yes,
Wednesday the
early.
25th,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit early. And watching the press conference today, honestly, George, he said so much nothing today. It was like, what are we? But it's even more so than in many cases. I heard a couple of questions asked by journalists. There are journalists from all major news outlets asking questions, and there were a couple of times where the Prime Minister literally didn't even address the subject matter of the question. No follow-up. They were like, next question. I'm like, okay. He kept saying, I've got nothing to announce right now. What he was speaking about, though, was how the government, he was pointing back to how the government supported people during COVID and how spending money. It was like he was sending messages to Jagmeet Singh and the NDP to be like, we're doing it, we're spending. But and he took a couple of shots at Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader and official opposition. It was interesting to
Well, Pierre Poilievre is polling ahead of him now by about 5 points. NDP are polling pretty well. It's an opportunity, and it really kind of depends on Quebec, on how they, where their support lands and what they do there. But it's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how Jagmeet Singh, Jagmeet Singh, kind of how you play this in the next election. You've been basically kowtowing to the Prime Minister's wishes. I think they're getting stuff, but they're not promoting it in the way that they should. Like, we got all this stuff because of us. That would be, if it wasn't for us, Trudeau would be right wing or something, right?
Something. But they literally, Trudeau was pointing to dental, which has been an NDP thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And today it was like, we dental. And it's like, oh, and you see Jagmeet Singh on social media, and social media isn't indicative of the greater voter base, but it is loud. And he seems pissed at the Liberal government, and yet still continues to prop.
What choice does he have?
What choice does he have?
He could, if he forces an election, he could end with Poilievre, and as a human being, he may have a problem with that as a person, as a leader. So if he sticks around, or if they continue this coalition, which is really what it is, they can keep the Conservatives out of government for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's, I think, it's, going back to Eby a little bit, who is eating the BC Liberals, or United BC, whenever that name is official. He's eating their lunch. He's taking a lot of their ideas, and which is a total Liberal thing. So it sort of shows you Eby is kind of a centrist, pretty close to center as an NDPer. He's probably
felt that way when I interviewed him for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It was, he answered all of our questions in a meaningful way. Like, even when he said, I'd love to be able to tell you right now, I'm going to do that right this second, but I'll tell you as soon as I do. And this is what we're thinking. And one of the things that I think is important to mention on the podcast today is about healthcare. While the headlines are so juicy about our healthcare system in Canada and how some provinces are looking to private healthcare clinics to sort of outsource some of the backlog to try and
Mm-hmm.
prop up the system. We asked Premier-Eby this specifically, and he said BC is the only province that is absolutely not going that route. The government is going the route of actually buying up some of these places to incorporate into, at a cost. But these are some of the things I think, and Prime Minister Trudeau's like, I'm not just going to throw money at healthcare in each region without there being some sort of plan and return on investment, which, it's like, oh, how precarious is
Yeah.
this going to get before this happens? Like, it's all a lot of politicking. But it was
Yeah.
interesting, I think, because of the point that Premier-Eby was making about if we just do what Doug Ford's doing, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where more doctors are being pulled out of our
Well, and
system and into these private clinics.
this has been challenged in our Supreme Court by British Columbians. Privatization has lost several times in courts. And
Yeah.
so Ontario may talk about that, but as soon as somebody decides to challenge it based on precedents from British Columbia's challenges, which failed,
Right.
it's unlikely privatization will happen unless the court changes or something, because the basic and way it's embedded. And so I'll be interested to see it. Trudeau is playing a defense game here, playing on the fence, and then Eby is definitely, I think it goes to, like, we talk a lot about this mushy middle, right, in politics, and Vancouver being the center of that. How do you win politically? Trudeau definitely a centrist. Liberals, in its sense, its essence is a centrist party, and I think Eby is definitely playing that center game. I think what's interesting with the Liberals changing their name, I never thought that was a good idea, because I think the Liberal name provides them an immediate attraction to the center.
Yep.
By changing the name, now people are going to go, well, I'll vote NDP then, because that sounds like a
Right.
right-wing
Because
party.
those are conservative. Yeah.
So
One more thing with regard to the healthcare system in here and the concerns that I want to hit this story out of Port Hardy. Saw this, obviously, they're down to one ER
yeah,
doctor.
you saw that guy, that poor guy. He's like, I'm all by myself here.
Bless
Help!
him, bless him. And
Somebody
for
send
those,
help.
everybody up island in remote areas, if you have an emergency in a remote area and you're float planed in, guess where you
Yep.
go? Port Hardy.
I have
So there's,
a couple of friends who work up there in the North Island in emergency services, ambulances, and yeah,
yeah,
it's a hard life. They're busy.
bringing in, as we've talked so many times, George, bringing in the physicians and nurses who are accredited and qualified from in other jurisdictions, and getting them up to speed, shortening the time of getting all the proper training and paperwork done. David-Eby was saying that they're taking that process from 4 years down to 9 months, and even getting some on the job to work under other physicians or nurses to get it, something moving, which, again, we've been talking about a ton. Can I
Mm-hmm.
slip in one more thing that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with
No, you
politics?
cannot. No, forbidden.
I love the folk festival. I love the
Oh,
Vancouver Folk Festival. I go every single year, other than obviously in a pandemic year, but it's the family friendly place where you throw down a blanket. The food is affordable. They've got the little
the
marketplace with the
young and old
artisan.
hippies,
Young and old,
get
I am such a
from
hippie.
England get to come together to watch
Like, we got
international
Greek days
music.
and Catalano days and Italian days, and we got the great festivals. We got the huge, big celebration of light and that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
the Vancouver Folk Festival, to me, is one that is worth saving. And the board saying, we can't do it. It's going to cost at least $500,000 in a world where we're tossing around billions for other things.
That's
Is there not a $500,000 somewhere? Someone watching or listening right now, please.
this is the challenge. I mean, I don't know what their policing budget, and I imagine policing for the Folk Fest is really hardcore. So, hey, you hippies, stop smoking that marijuana.
Stop smoking that weed. It's legal now. You can.
I know.
But it's at the beach.
Still,
It's at the beach.
I don't know
You're
what.
not allowed to do it. Not allowed to
but
do
I
it.
bet you their police budget's $100,000 because it's
You're probably
required.
right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's hard to get sponsors these days. You look at all the events that have ended. No New Year's festival. No Santa Claus
Right.
parade.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
tough. It's tough. And
That's
so
where I got to know your wife, Amanda. Was the
The
Santa
Santa
Claus
Claus Parade.
Parade.
Yeah, she used to produce
Yeah,
the TV version.
I love that
Um,
woman.
so I don't know. It's you got to show the math. You got to make it majority private and a bit of government funding. But if you want $500,000 for the government, I wouldn't support that. No way. You can't have my
Right.
money.
No,
You
I
go
mean
find your own money.
private sector.
Yeah,
I mean private.
I know
There's
it's
got to be.
tough.
Chip Wilson. I know you're watching, bud.
He probably goes to it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
Actually,
well,
yeah.
he could call it Chip Wilson Folk Fest, the
Why not?
Lululemon Folk Fest. I don't think the people
Email
would
us.
support
No,
that. The
follow us
folk festival
along on
people,
Twitter.
there's no way the folk festival people would support a corporate name ahead of the name, the folk fest. That's the
No,
problem with that festival. They
that
can't,
is the
they don't
problem.
want it. They want it, but they don't want to monetize it in the way that traditionally you need to monetize and sponsor things. So they're a victim of their own, what shall I say, hippiness.
That's true. I love it though. You can follow us.
I'll play some real terrible folk music for you when
Oh,
we meet
thank
for
you.
lunch. I'll bring over some of
Thank
my,
you.
I don't know what it is. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Shout out to
Shout
David
out.
Crosby.
Follow us on Twitter at George_Affleck. At George_Affleck. At Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance on Twitter. UnSpunPodcast.com is where you go to make sure that this gets delivered to your inbox when we do it. Because sometimes we have to move it because George is going traveling and stuff. Because I go nowhere.
Yeah.
All I do is work. That's it.
I'm working. I got a client. I'm going to visit them far away, but there's one there.
Okay. Good luck with that.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks. Bye.